So let's dive into these specification styles for automation. We have this neat breakdown between, the imperative and declarative approaches.
Yep, right. And what I find fascinating is how these styles shape our approach to both testing and RPA.
Absolutely. I mean, on one end, you have keyword-driven testing, which is like really all about following specific step-by-step commands.
Kind of like following a recipe, right? Each keyword tells you exactly what to do next.
Exactly. It's imperative in the sense that you are giving a series of instructions, sort of like cooking from a strict set of directions.
Right. And then there's the behavior-driven approach, which feels more like describing a scenario, almost like telling a story.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely more declarative. Instead of saying, do this, then do that, you're describing what the system should actually do from a user's perspective.
So it uses those natural language cues, given, when, then, and but, to set the stage, right?
Right, it's like writing user stories and acceptance criteria. And a neat point here is that even though Robot Framework supports a behavior-driven syntax, it still gives you the flexibility to call multiple layers of keywords, which is, really powerful.
Yeah, true, that flexibility seems invaluable. But I sometimes wonder, isn't it a bit confusing when you mix layers of keywords? Wouldn't that defeat the simplicity of the narrative style?
That's a fair point, but the idea is to use the layered keywords for flexibility and more detailed logging. It's like having your cake and eating it too. You're still describing behavior, yet you're able to dive deep into the technical execution if needed.
Right. So you mean it's essential to keep the styles separate, even if you can technically mix them in one test case?
Exactly. The recommendation is to keep separate styles for separate purposes. For example, you might write acceptance test cases in a behavior-driven style to express user expectations, while more technical, system-level tests are best handled with keyword-driven scripts.
And that's where the distinction really comes into play. One is more about the system's behavior, and the other focuses on the technical steps required to get there.
Yes, precisely. Think of it like this. The behavior-driven style is your high-level blueprint, like a sketch of what the building should look like, while the keyword-driven style is the detailed construction plan.
Exactly. That analogy really brings it home. But then there's also the data-driven approach. How does that fit in with all this?
Ah yes, data-driven specification is its own beast. It's about separating the test data from the test logic. So instead of writing a bunch of nearly identical tests over and over, you design a test once and run it with multiple sets of data.
Yeah, that's smart. So essentially, it's like running the same recipe with different ingredients, ensuring that you cover all possible scenarios the system might face.
Exactly. And this approach really boosts efficiency, clarity, and scalability. When you have large data sets, it becomes super clear and manageable because the logic remains unchanged while only the data varies.
Absolutely. And I imagine that in testing automation, this separation can reduce redundancy. Instead of duplicating logic, you just vary the inputs.
Yeah, and Robot Framework even supports this with test templates, which makes the whole thing a lot more convenient.
That's neat. Speaking of Robot Framework, its ability to blend multiple layers of keywords in behavior-driven tests, that seems like a unique aspect compared to other BDD frameworks, right?
Right. Typically in frameworks like Cucumber, you match natural language sentences directly to step definitions written in a programming language. But with Robot Framework, you get this extra modularity, so you can call a user keyword that itself calls other keywords.
Yes, exactly. However, don't you think this added modularity could make debugging a bit more complicated when things don't work as expected?
That's a fair challenge. It can get a bit intricate when you're dealing with many layers. But the detailed logging offered by Robot Framework helps mitigate that by providing insight into each step.
Right, that makes sense. It's like having a map that shows you every twist and turn along the way.
Exactly. And the choice between imperative and declarative isn't just academic. It affects how we write and maintain our test cases. With keyword-driven, the focus is on the sequence of actions, which works great for complex, step-heavy scenarios.
Absolutely. And in business contexts, where non-technical stakeholders need to understand what's happening, the behavior-driven narrative really shines.
Yes, It bridges that gap between technical detail and business language. But on the flip side, when you have an escalation in the number of steps, the behavior-driven style can sometimes become cluttered, especially if there's a lot of embedded data.
That's a good point. So it sounds like there's a trade-off: simplicity and clarity at the higher level versus detailed control and flexibility at the lower level.
Absolutely, it's a balance. And that's why many adopt a hybrid approach. You can use one style for acceptance criteria and another for system-level tests.
I see. But isn't there a risk in mixing styles, even if they're in separate parts of a test suite? Might that lead to inconsistency?
That's a legitimate concern. The guideline is to avoid mixing styles within the same body of work. Keeping a clear boundary between them ensures that the intent and the implementation remain aligned.
Exactly. And data-driven specification enhances both styles by decoupling the data from the logic, making repeated tests less of a hassle.
Yes, it essentially acts as a multiplier. You write your logic once, and then with various data sets, you can cover a huge number of scenarios without rewriting the same steps over and over.
Absolutely. And that's a key benefit: efficiency and scalability.
Correct. Efficiency is huge here because you reduce redundant work. It also makes maintaining tests simpler because any update to the logic is made in one spot and applies across all data sets.
Right on. So, if I get this right, using data-driven specification, you can say, here's my template, run it with these 5 or 6 different data combinations, and then, bam, you're done.
That's it? It's like having one really solid engine that can run many different races depending on the fuel you provide?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And when it comes to really complex tasks where lots of data combinations are needed, data-driven testing ensures nothing is left uncovered.
Right, because if you only relied on a single static flow of instructions, you might miss out on edge cases that could break the system later on.
Exactly. It seems like the collaboration between these styles really helps in building a comprehensive automation strategy.
Absolutely. Combining the clarity of behavior-driven with the precision of keyword-driven and the efficiency of data-driven gives you a robust framework.
Now, I have a small critique here. Sometimes I wonder if emphasizing the separation so strictly might stifle some creative, integrated approaches. What do you think?
I see what you mean. While keeping them separate is ideal for clarity, in some cases, a more blended approach could actually reflect the real-world complexity of what users expect. You have to be careful to not overcomplicate either side.
Absolutely. So, there's room for flexibility as long as the core intent is preserved.
Exactly. And that's where teams need to understand the context of their projects. The discipline to separate styles shouldn't become a rigid rule that prevents necessary innovation.
Right, that's fair. It's a bit like choosing the right tool for the job. You adapt based on what the situation demands.
Totally. And that adaptability is one of the biggest advantages of frameworks like Robot Framework. They give you the freedom to mix and match while also offering guidelines to maintain structure.
Overall, it sounds like these specification styles, keyword-driven, behavior-driven, and data-driven, each bring their own strengths, and using them wisely can really streamline and strengthen your automation process.
Exactly. It's all about leveraging the right approach at the right time to create clear, maintainable, and scalable tests.
Absolutely right. Well, I think this breakdown really sheds light on why understanding these different styles can make such a difference in automation success.
Yes, indeed. And it's like having an expanded toolbox. Knowing when to use each tool ensures you build a more resilient system.
Absolutely. Cheers to that. This conversation has been really enlightening, especially when considering how these approaches not only improve efficiency, but also bridge the gap between technical detail and business clarity.
For sure. And it's always these little nuances that can really elevate the quality of automation projects.
Yep. Great chat today. Thanks for breaking it down with such clarity.
No problem. It was a pleasure to unpack these ideas. Until next time, keep experimenting and refining those tests.